On this Friday night, the weather outside is downright frightful. Brutal conditions are battering parts of North America.
Stay home.
And ruining travel plans. How long this extreme weather could last. Shooting spree in Paris. The suspected hate crime. The accused other running with the law and the anger at police. Rising anxiety over China's rising COVID cases. The potential ripple effects for Canada's strained healthcare system. Plus, one family's unbreakable.
Those bulbs there, they have to be around 100 or maybe probably better than 100 years old.
Decoration tradition.
Global National with Farah Nasser.
A relentless storm bearing down on both eastern and western Canada today, bringing with it wind, snow, freezing rain, and power outages to hundreds of thousands of Canadian homes. And then the travel piece. There's a good chance the family members flying in for Christmas dinner won't make it. Boards filled with bad news, arrivals and departures. Of all the flights scheduled to fly out of Vancouver today, 78 have been cancelled so far. In Toronto, more than 185. In Ottawa, 31. And further east in Montreal, 29. That's not including the dozens and dozens of delays. Good evening, and thank you for joining us from hopefully a place that's warm and safe. Now is just about the time many Canadians are wondering whether to keep or cancel Christmas plans. With power problems, messy roads, and bone-chilling cold, it isn't exactly the perfect Christmas holiday picture many envisioned months ago. Mike Drolet now with the most populated places in Canada impacted.
The storm hit Toronto with a ferocity unseen in perhaps ever. 10 to 15-foot waves hit the shore, but with 100-kilometer-per-hour winds expected through the evening, they could top 30 feet across all 5 Great Lakes. Mild temperatures on Thursday night continued into Friday morning and then fell off a cliff, dropping from plus 3 degrees at 9 a.m. to minus 9 3 hours later, turning water on the roads into an icy mess. Parts of the 401 highway were closed as the OPP reported hundreds of accidents. Visibility deteriorated so rapidly, border crossings from Ontario to the U.S. had to be closed, leading to Toronto's mayor reiterating what Environment Canada had earlier suggested.
The best thing probably that you can do over the next day or 2 or 3 is to stay home.
And that's good advice for those already home or at their destination. Less so for the thousands of travelers stuck in airports like Alex Desier and her friends in Montreal. They expected and planned for delays, so they brought an air mattress to the terminal.
I think comfort is not a choice. It's an option that you need to choose, right? So we're here waiting, and actually we're having a good time.
Nearby, the lineup for the white rebooking phones was long and barely moving.
I'm not one that easily gives up, so, but I don't know. I've got my husband waiting in the car.
Delays and cancellations primarily impacted those flying towards Vancouver. WestJet canceled all flights in and out of Ontario and BC. Air Canada followed with cancellations of its own, leaving travelers grumbling.
The airlines aren't super great to deal with. They haven't been super polite.
In BC, the storm continues to confound, with overwhelming amounts of snow in Coquitlam, and a mix of freezing rain and snow creating the possibility of falling ice or ice bombs on the Port Mann and Alex Fraser bridges. Both had to be closed for safety issues, but with all the warnings from government, the impacts were little, as most people chose to stay home. Mike Drolet, Global News, Toronto.
In the U.S., the storm has been deadly. Officials have confirmed at least 3 weather-related deaths today, with fears there could be more coming. More than 200 million Americans are under some kind of weather warning. And as Jennifer Johnson reports, millions have been left without power there.
Hurricane-like winds, Arctic air, and what meteorologists call a bomb cyclone are creating pre-Christmas travel chaos from Texas to the U.S.-Canadian border. Thousands of flights have been canceled. Chicago and Denver, 2 of the largest travel hubs, are among the hardest hit airports, stranding and rerouting passengers.
There's literally just people sleeping all I mean, in our terminal, all over the place.
I have this insane itinerary now. It's been a little nerve-wracking.
Nerves are also frayed for those on trains, highways, and roads. Amtrak has canceled service on more than 20 routes, most in the Midwest. Near zero visibility has shut down highways between Colorado and Wyoming. Even cities in the south like Nashville, Tennessee and Jackson, Mississippi have been crippled by snow. Seasoned winter drivers are taking no chances.
Like even in the areas that have been plowed really well, if you get above 40 miles an hour, you start sliding around.
But it's the record cold temperatures that have officials most concerned. Denver's International Airport saw a 37-degree drop in temperature in 1 hour, the biggest ever recorded.
I think our plans are ruined.
Parts of Wyoming could hit minus 56 degrees. Frigid temperatures in Texas have already caused power outages, leaving some residents in the cold and dark. The governor promises the power grid will hold up after it crashed last winter, resulting in at least 250 deaths.
I'm really glad that I have a fireplace because otherwise I'd be freezing right now.
Georgia has declared a state of emergency. Atlanta is expected to record its coldest Christmas Eve on record. In cities across the country, homeless shelters are packed. Governors are begging residents to stay home.
Stay inside. Stay off the roads. The last second shopping is not worth it if it would cost you your life.
But millions of Americans are still traveling, trying desperately to get to their loved ones. The joy of Christmas looking more like a nightmare.
I was freaked out because I've never been in like a blizzard or like snow or any weather like that before.
44 of America's 48 lower states are under some kind of winter, wind chill, freeze, or high wind alert. A brutal, not so very Merry Christmas weekend for millions. Jennifer Johnson, Global News, Washington.
So clearly some major damage already done across large swaths of Canada in the U.S. But how long is this extreme weather going to last? And could there be more disruptions ahead? Our Global News meteorologist Anthony Farnell joins us now. Anthony, we're all focused on the next couple of days. Is this going to be the worst of it?
Well, Farah, across the country as a whole, I would say the worst conditions are occurring right now. Both systems, the one on the west coast and this monster here in Ontario and Quebec, will begin weakening come tomorrow. In between, that frigid Arctic air also starting to moderate, and it'll become well above average through the prairies into early next week. But we have a ways to go, and this spin you see right here, that is a bomb cyclone that's now pushed into Quebec. We've got rain for much of the Maritimes, some snow to the north, blizzard conditions, and 100-kilometer-per-hour winds back on the other side of this low, and that's going to continue even into Saturday around the Great Lakes. Blizzard warnings in place here for your red areas. Travel not recommended. Northern Ontario as well. Still some extreme cold warnings and still some freezing rain issues on the west coast, but hang in there. It gets better by Christmas, and the warming trend continues through next week. Farah?
Okay, that's some good news. Thank you. Global News meteorologist Anthony Farnell. To Paris now, where a gunman opened fire at a Kurdish cafe and community center in a bustling neighborhood in the city. 3 people are dead, and police are trying to determine if it was a targeted attack. The suspect, who's been arrested, was awaiting trial for a separate violent incident at a migrant camp. Kurdish community members say they've reported threats to police in the past. And as Crystal Goomansingh reports, frustrations have now reached a boiling point, with a riot breaking out near the crime scene.
People originally gathering in solidarity following a deadly shooting found themselves swept up in a mob attack. Projectiles were tossed at police in the 10th district of Paris. In response, officers fired tear gas. Eventually, riot police moved in to disperse the crowd from the typically busy multicultural area filled with shops, bars, and restaurants. I'm a defense lawyer. It's my job to defend people who are losing it for different reasons at different times. But I am in shock and I am grieving. A 69-year-old Frenchman was arrested by police accused of murder and attempted murder. A construction worker in the area who witnessed the incident told the Associated Press that the shooter had a small pistol, was silent, and appeared calm. The individual in question was already known to the judicial services. His name appeared in 2 cases. Officials say the accused was not labeled an extremist by government agencies. The incident unfolded at a Turkish cultural center run by the Kurdish Democratic Council. its leadership is calling the shooting an act of terror, saying it followed threats from Turkey. Before the riots broke out, the Interior Minister took in the site of the investigation and spoke with reporters on the scene about enhancing security. I asked all police services in Paris and elsewhere in the National Territory to protect the places where the Kurdish community gathers, as well as Turkish diplomatic locations. French President Emmanuel Macron said the Kurdish people in the capital had been the target of a heinous attack. He also praised law enforcement for their courage and composure. Crystal Goomansingh, Global News, London.
After an historic surprise visit to the U.S. to keep up crucial support for his country, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is back to work in Kyiv.
Добрий ранок всім. Бажаю всім здоров'я.
We're working toward victory, Zelensky says in the short video, as Ukraine approaches its second year of enduring Russia's brutal invasion of the country. Washington is already sending some goodwill after his trip. Today, the U.S. Congress approved a more than $44 billion U.S. aid package announced earlier this week to further support Ukraine's defenses. In Washington, the January 6th committee has released its final report, and it points its finger directly at one person, former President Donald Trump. The more than 800-page final document alleges Trump engaged in a multi-part conspiracy to overturn the 2020 election he lost. The report released by the congressional panel investigating last year's attack on the U.S. Capitol concluded Trump was the central cause of the events. It suggests 11 recommendations to ensure nothing like this happens again, including a change to the nation's insurrection laws that would effectively bar Donald Trump from ever holding public office again. COVID is resurging with a vengeance in China. Coming up, what scientists fear could happen next. Plus, the money earmarked to upgrade Canada's search and rescue helicopters. Ottawa has announced 2 contracts to extend the life of Canada's fleet of search and rescue helicopters. The Cormorant helicopters, which have flown search and rescue missions since 2001, now require upgrades to remain operationally effective. The Department of National Defence says it'll spend $1.24 billion for those updates. That will involve contracts awarded to companies CAE in Montreal and Leonardo UK in Britain to perform the overhaul. It will also add 3 more helicopters to the 13 now in the fleet. This holiday season marks the first without COVID restrictions for many Canadians since the pandemic began. But that hasn't stopped lingering concern about the virus. And now there's growing anxiety over an explosion of cases in China, which some scientists warn will become a petri dish for new variants of the virus to emerge. And that's raising worries already for our overstretched healthcare system here at home. Touria Izri reports.
For most Canadians, this is the first restriction-free Christmas since the pandemic. But Canada's top doctor is warning COVID-19 could still unleash new problems.
Overall, the virus is still young in terms of its circulation in the human population, even though we're fed up with it.
In her year-end interview with Global News, Dr. Touria Izri urged Canadians to take precautions, with COVID-19, RSV, and the flu all circulating at high levels.
We can write our own story as to what happens post-holiday season. If we took these measures, we will come out of this next couple of weeks and more safely.
But with hospitals overwhelmed, healthcare workers on the front line are frustrated, saying the federal government's messaging does not go far enough.
This is the first, Christmas holiday period where we've gone into it buck naked in terms of any public health policies.
Omicron arrived around this time last year and spread rapidly over the holidays and the months that followed. Since then, it's become the dominant strain. And there are fears about new strains, with COVID-19 cases exploding in China. Beijing backed away from its zero COVID policy after unprecedented protests. Since then, cases have swelled in a population with little immunity.
Whenever the virus is spreading anywhere widely in an uncontrolled fashion, it has the potential for variants to emerge.
Modeling by a British research firm shows China is dealing with 1 million new COVID cases daily and is expected to be the world's biggest outbreak.
it's likely that those numbers will not be officially given by the Chinese government.
If you have an explosion of cases in other countries, whether it be China, the US, or anywhere in the world, that's going to have an impact here.
So doctors are urging people, wherever they travel, whether it's between countries or between households, to remember the pandemic is not over. Touria Izri, Global News, Ottawa.
It's all about trust. Ahead, a status update on how Canadians feel about social media. The pandemic has changed so many things about our world and how we see it, and it appears to have had an unexpected impact on social media. A new Ipsos poll conducted for Global News found nearly a third of Canadians say they are less likely to trust what they read on social media than they were prior to the pandemic. As Mike Armstrong explains, the poll also shows some significant generational divides.
Overall, Canadians are basically split on social media. 54% say they trust the information they get, and 46% say they don't. Where it gets interesting is how it breaks down by age. The younger the group, the more trusting. More than 2/3 of Gen Z say they trust information on social media, significantly less for millennials and Gen X, it's only about half. And for baby boomers, only 45% trust social media information.
Older generations seem much more concerned about social media's ability to spread false information quickly.
Now, the big difference may be confidence. Older Canadians grew up with traditional media, where information was usually fact-checked before being put out to the world, while younger generations have grown up knowing what they read online isn't necessarily the truth.
In social media, you have to be your own editor. And I think younger people are much more attuned to that.
The vast majority of Canadians believe misinformation is a problem. 79% say it threatens democratic values. But again, different age groups disagree on what to do. Should there be regulation of social media to cut down on fake news, or should it be left up to the platforms to police themselves? Overall, 8 in 10 Canadians say stronger regulation is needed. But younger generations are more likely to feel things should be left as is.
The younger people are saying, I got this. I can do this on my own. I don't need you regulating it for me.
A service that is as broadly inclusive as possible.
The Ipsos poll also looked at Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter. The company's reputation has taken a hit with Canadians. 61% say Musk's purchase means misinformation is more likely to spread. Mike Armstrong, Global News, Montreal.
Next, the festive federal government video raising some eyebrows.
Omar, it's time.
And with the word of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, Transport Minister Omar Al-Gabra has permitted Santa to use Canadian airspace this holiday season. The more than 2-minute-long video showed earlier today to the minister's social media channels online have people divided on whether it's a fun spoof, Mission Impossible style, or if it just costs taxpayers too much money to produce. Around this time of year, we can get caught up in all things new and shiny. Well, one New Brunswick couple is certainly going for sparkle, but their Christmas tree's ornaments are more than 100 years old. Our Shelley Steeves spoke with them.
I'm old-fashioned, so I keep my tree the same.
I love it. And he is so excited, like super excited about his trees.
There's roughly right around 400 ornaments on it. Oh my God. There's approximately, maybe 2,900 mini lights on it. Dad gave me probably most of the old ornaments. So they've been on our tree now for 51 years. Those bulbs there, they have to be around 100 or maybe probably better than 100 years old. Even the tops are rusted on. This one here, the pink one, those have been on my tree as long as I can remember. I believe he bought them perhaps maybe back in the late 50s. They're priceless. I wouldn't sell them for any amount of money. I'll sit by myself and look, just keep staring at the ornaments. And every ornament, when you look at it, you think of all the Christmases you had when you were little.
Look at this one, huh?
Oh yeah, that's one of me. I was about 11 or 12 years old, me and my dad. And on this tree, you can pick out a lot of the ornaments. I believe that's the pink one right there. It's always been on my tree as long as I remember. And the kids always look for that pink bulb.
Aren't you scared to death to break some?
I've had it for 51 years, that tree, and I've never broken an ornament in 51 years.
I hear that you're not allowed to touch the bulbs on the tree.
Not allowed to touch the bulbs, put them on the tree, put them away, nothing.
I don't let anybody else do it except me. But sometimes it's hard to get them to hang just right. Sometimes you end up putting one at a time on. Then I have to sit down for a while. I'm 73. I won't tell you her age.
Smart boy.
Smart man.
Everybody laughs at me, but at Christmas time, once I get the tree up and the icicles on, I hide the remote. I put it up in the cupboard. Nobody can get a hold.
The tinsel if you turn
Well,
that
yeah,
fan on.
all the icicles was all full. Oh, everybody laughs at that. Anything ever happen in the house, catch a fire, ornaments go first.
What about Joe?
Well, yeah, once you know.
He might come back in.
Do you think somebody in your family will take on the tradition?
We're hoping.
Oh, that is just a great way to end the newscast. That is Global National for this Friday night. I'm Farah Nasser, and thank you so much for spending part of your evening with us. And I just want to give a special thanks to our field crews tonight who braved the elements much more than usual to bring us the news. Before we go, we have one more festive tree to show you. This one at the Valley Zoo in Edmonton. We love seeing your Canada, so please keep emailing your photos to viewers@globalnational.com. Colleen Christie will be at the anchor desk tomorrow. That's it from me until the new year. Wishing you a safe, happy, and peaceful holiday season. Good night.